Hey, what's up everyone? In today's video, we're going to be going over how to recreate this animating text. You'll notice that the text comes in from the right side of the screen and then stays in the center of the screen for a couple seconds and then animates off to the left side. You'll also notice that the text changes every time. Our first step is to create a label in the center of the screen. To do that, we're going to define a new variable. We're going to call it label of type UI label. And then we're going to set the font to be bold system font of size 40. And we're going to set the text for now to be first message. Then we'll add our label to the view controllers view. So we'll do view.add_subview, and we'll just pass in the label we just created. And then we need to set the label's frame, but before we do that, we're going to define a few constants that we'll be using. First, we're going to define a constant called screen width. And to get this, we're going to use UIScreen.main. And this essentially takes our device's current screen. And we can get the bounds, basically the size, and then get the width. We're going to create another constant, and we're going to name it screen half height. And we're going to get this value similarly to how we got screen width. But we're going to divide by 2. And the reason we want half the height is that we want to center our text in the middle of the screen. Now we can go ahead and set our label's center property. You'll see the center point of the view's frame rectangle. And this takes in a CG point. And now we can use our constants. So we'll take screen width divided by 2 to center the label for now, just to see it. And then for the Y, we'll just pass in screen half height. And then now if we run our app, you'll actually see that we just have a blank screen. And the reason that is because we haven't defined a size for our label. So the label is in the middle of the screen and just has no size, so you can't see any of the text. In order to resize this, we're going to use label.size_to_fit, which resizes and moves the receiver view so it just encloses its subview. Basically, you call this function on the label and then it'll resize to fit the text that we defined, which is first message. So if we run the app one more time, you'll see that we see first message in the middle of the screen. Our next step is to animate this text, and so we're going to create a new function called Animate Text. We're going to add this function, or call the function rather, in view.didLoad. The way animations work is that you set the values that you want the animation to start at, and then you call UIView.animate, and then within the block passed to that function, you provide the properties that you want the UI view to end at. And so we want the label to start off screen and then animate on screen. So we're going to first set the label center to, and then we're going to reuse some of this code. So we want the text to remain in the center of the screen on the y-axis, so this y component's good. We actually want the x component, currently it's in the center of the screen, we want it to be over on the right side of the screen, so we're going to do screen width, and we're just going to add label.frame.width. Next we want to animate the label into the center of the screen. To do that, we're going to call UIView.animate. With duration, we're going to specify as 1 to make the animation take 1 second. We don't want any delay between when we call this function and when the animation starts, so we're going to specify 0. We can delete the next 2 properties. And then for options, we're going to specify curve ease in out, which adds acceleration and deceleration to our animation. For animation, we're just going to put in some placer code right now. And then for completion, we're going to do the same. Within this animations block, we can set where we want our label center to end. So let's copy and paste some of that code. Again, we want our label to remain in the middle of the screen from the y-axis perspective, but we want the label to end up in the middle of the x-axis. And so we're going to do screen width divided by 2. And then because we are calling label within a block, we need to use weak self to avoid a retain cycle. And then now if we run our app, you'll see our label animates from the right side and then animates in. Next, we want to animate our text off to the left side of the screen, and so we're going to use what we currently have as a placeholder completion block. This block is called when the animation completes. We can actually kick off another UI view animation in here, so we're going to call UI view.animate again. For the duration, we're going to specify 1 to have a nice even animation. For the delay, we're going to specify 2. That is, after the text first animates to the center of the screen, we want it to stay there for 2 seconds and then animate off to the left side. As we did before, we can remove these 2 properties. For options, we'll use the same curve ease in out option. For animations, we'll leave this as a placeholder for now. And then we can remove the completion block because we don't need it. Now within this second animation block, we can set our label center to be on the left side of the screen. We're going to set the X component to be negative label frame width. And we actually need to access our label.frame.width without an optional. So we're going to use weak self here, and we're going to guard that self exists. And then now we can use self without the optional. And then we'll fix some of the spacing here. So then if we run our app again, you'll see the text animates in, rests for 2 seconds, and then animates off to the left side of the screen. Next, we want our animation to repeat continuously. To do this, we're going to use a timer. We're going to call timer.scheduled-timer. For the time interval, we're going to specify 4 seconds, and that's to account for our animation, which has 1 second here, 1 second here, and 2 seconds here. We're going to set repeats equal to true. And for our block, we don't care about the timer, but we're going to use weak self in order to call self.animate text here. And we also need to call timer.fire, and the reason that is because scheduled timer only fires after the initial time interval, but we also want our timer to fire at time 0, and so we're going to call this here. And then if we run our app, you'll see the text animates in, animates out, and then immediately animates back in. Finally, we want to change the content inside the label. I'm going to copy and paste in an array of strings. We also want to define a new property variable called index. We're going to initialize it to 0. This will help us keep track of which string we should show. I'm going to create a new private function called updateText. We're going to call this function from within our timer. And then within updateText, we're going to update our labels text. We're going to use our index. Then we're going to increment our index by 1. And then because we're changing the text contents of the label, we want to call size to fit again. And then now if we run our app one last final time, you'll see first message animates in and out. And then we get second message. And then this will be followed by third message. And then we're going to loop back to first message. Okay, everyone, that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe if you learned anything. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.